John, what's your involvement in the case now?
Mayra's in the unique position of needing a criminal defense lawyer and a personal injury civil rights lawyer. Mm-hmm. Mine is the personal injury civil rights side. That's what I'm board certified in. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see your case going?
Certainly, we're gonna watch and see how her medical condition progresses. But clearly, she's already got some nerve components, some serious injury that we want to watch and follow. She's got, I think, 3 MRIs scheduled for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That's not normal. Mm-hmm. So we're going to watch and see, and we're looking at both the officer through his employer, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and some of the other officers who didn't step up and protect her from scene 1 to scene 2, and further on, there's missing video.
So what is the civil rights violation you feel like you see here in this case?
Under Section 1983, Ms. Martinez had a right to due process, and that due process is a broad law, and it's excessive use of force, particularly in this one. But it also covers the officers that just stood there. The law says when somebody's in peril, you do have an affirmative duty, and Sheriff Williams recognized that and said they were going back and looking at the tape. So it's clearly an excessive use of force. I've reviewed these cases in the past, particularly with Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They do have policies and protocols. They did violate those policies and protocols. There is no excuse for the amount of closed fist pounding that Officer Borisov did on Ms. Martinez.
Mm-hmm. So how far could this civil rights case go?
They generally do not resolve, for whatever reason. Civil rights cases rarely resolve pre-suit. They rarely get settled, so to speak, early on. So if that's the case, then they generally go to federal court. It's the federal court here in Jacksonville. We just settled one that was due to be tried for Judge Corrigan a couple of weeks ago. And they can take a while, and nobody likes that process. It doesn't advantage anybody. It doesn't advantage the citizens of Jacksonville. It doesn't the taxpayers. It doesn't Ms. Martinez. It doesn't the officer. But until we know what her damages are, it's hard to say, what the monetary recompense for that is. Mm-hmm. And it's not just, people look at lawyers and sometimes think it's about the money, and it's really not. It's about what happens when the camera's not rolling. What happens when a Good Samaritan doesn't film? What happens when like in this instance, when that camera stopped? What happened? Why don't we get the full picture of her being brought back to consciousness using ammonia or smelling salts?
Mm-hmm. Do we believe that happened in the Sallyport when she was...
Yes, Ms. Martinez says that was her, that was how she woke up, mm-hmm. was to the smell of something strong, is I think how she put it. And we've had conversations with people who had conversations with the EMTs who said, they felt that information was left out, and that, they're going to treat based upon the information they're given. And they didn't know that she had been through what she had been through. She could have had a fairly serious neck injury and died if they gave the improper treatment because they didn't have the proper information.
So that's what you're hearing, is you're hearing that EMTs don't feel like they were properly, given the tools of what they were going to treat?
There seems to be a lot of finger pointing amongst the internal agencies. Mm-hmm. And that's Department of Corrections, the jail officials, JSO officers that are on duty. I think there was a CCSO officer there. You have a bunch of intergovernmental people that all combined right at that point. And then you have Jack's Fire and Rescue EMTs that showed up, and we don't know that they did anything wrong. We don't know what protocol they followed, but there's the expression of bad information in, garbage out. Mm-hmm. And so if they were given bad information, I want to know, as a citizen of this town, but also as a lawyer, how long she was unconscious. That's extremely important. You don't leave anybody just there to sleep it off. Even boxers get woken up after they get knocked out. Mm-hmm. And she's no boxer. She's a person who may have trespassed. That's another case for another day. But at worst case scenario, she may have outstayed her welcome, and she got beat to a pulp.
Are you confident that there is a civil rights component in this case?
Yes, I'm completely confident there's a civil rights component in this case. You can't watch that video and not see problems. I respect Sheriff Williams. Sheriff Williams came forward with a press conference that basically said that. His termination speaks for itself. You know, we're not trying to pick on good officers. We are trying to pick on and eliminate from the police force bad officers. And that's what this process is designed to do. And you know, his termination doesn't just all of a sudden stop our questions as to whether this is happening again and again or how often.
And also, I know we've addressed this before, but the officers that are standing there observing and then do not render aid, what are your legal thoughts on that fallout?
I want to see the full video to determine what responsibility for the, you know, kind of the one standing silently by, you know, the officer that went there and just kind of patted him on the shoulder rather than pulled him off. I want to know if the officer that was there on the first scene was there on the second scene to allow this to happen again. You know, until we know who those officers were and can see things in a broader context, it's hard to make decisions on who's responsible. Sheriff Williams said he's doing that. We'd like to do that as well, and you know, take a look and you know, make sure justice is served all around. And if nothing else, it's a fine teaching point for the sheriff's office to render aid when somebody's, you know, being criminally assaulted or battered.
When you go back and watch that video, what comes to your mind?
You know, I have 2 boys, and I don't have a daughter. And if I had a daughter, like, I can't imagine being Mayra's family and watching that. Our daughters are who we're supposed to protect. And she wasn't out raising a stink. She, you know, it was the middle of the day. You know, again, worst case scenario, she outstayed her welcome somewhere. And to see the amount of force he brings down on her, not once, but then is allowed to do it again, to say it's disturbing isn't a strong enough word. It's horrifying. It's you know, it reckoned back to me the Rodney King beatings, except Rodney King was a big guy. And certainly this didn't last as long as Rodney King. But it's that type of violence that we don't need ever from our police force. And that's, I just don't want to see this get caught up in the politics between a state attorney's office, a sheriff's office, and that thin blue line that we hear about.
Is that a concern?
It is. It is.
So what do you think is the best resolution in your mind?
You know, we can't jump to justice you know, on day one. It's a process. And so we've got to see what's wrong with our client. We've got to see why in the world she was even charged with trespass and how she came to leave scores on such, you know, questionable terms. You know, we want to see what the broader picture is of what happened in these videos. And then, you know, see if the city wants to uphold what it said it will do and be responsible for the injuries that Officer Borisad caused.
Do you feel like Officer Borisad or former Officer Borisad is deserving of a more serious charge in this case?
From my understanding of the medical records, and I was just looking at the ER records back in my office before I came in here, there's enough there to warrant the upgraded felony charge. We've seen it in bullying cases. We've seen it in cases where they do not hesitate, if it's a member of the public where there's a serious injury, to upgrade a misdemeanor to a felony. That's what it's based upon, is serious bodily harm. And I see a young lady who you clearly saw what caused it, and she's got 3 MRIs tomorrow and is going through you know, some degree of memory loss and confusion, you know, numbness in both of her hands. That's not insignificant. That's not a minor injury. And so, you know, we can't jump to the end, but I'm already seeing, you know, enough justification to know that this is a serious injury and it should be treated as such.
Do you feel like Sheriff Williams has done enough?
Sheriff Williams hadn't been on the job very long, and he inherited this officer and inherited certain issues that come with the force. I respect Sheriff Williams. I respect 90-something% of law enforcement. I respect what he said in his press conference. Whether Sheriff Williams and the JSO and the state attorney's office let me down, so to speak, it remains to be seen. You know, the future will tell that. Right now, he has said things that I haven't heard another sheriff in this town say, and give some hard truths. They did release a video. It was part of the story, but they released a video. They've done some things that I'm not ready to give them a round of applause yet for, but I do appreciate and hopefully will lead to us understanding what happened here and fixing it so that it doesn't happen to anybody else, and also rectify and find justice for Ms. Martinez.
Is there anything else you want to add on this case?
No.
Anything else you think the public needs to know?
Anything else
From the
that?
sheriff's office or the case?
No, you know what? The only other standout point, and I'm hesitant to bring it up, is while y'all were interviewing, you know, Reed and Mayra, is somebody else called our office saying that they had been raped by JSO, and that there's going to be claims that come out of the woodwork, and we've got to vet everyone. No way am I ever going to say that that happened. Mm-hmm. But when you have somebody come forward and you have video that shows a story that's different than the one you're told, you're going to have people that come forward. Some maybe make false claims. Some make tough, real claims. And you know, stories like this are important, and we'll see, you know, whether this is an epidemic or an isolated incident.